2011, I joined Facebook as an early member of its ads team. And so believe it or not, as late as 2011, this is about a half of Facebook's entire ads team in product and engineering. That's me in the back with the little logo fleece as a proud foot soldier for Facebook. I'm the only product manager. Everyone else is an engineer. And my job was to turn your data into money. I was the first product manager for ads targeting. And so believe it or not, like it or not, if you go and browse the internet, or you buy something in a store, or you do something in the world, and then you go back and you see ads targeted against it in Facebook, I created the first versions of that. That's what I contributed to Facebook. So what did I do when I left? I was a total burnt out, depressed, angry former techie. And I just wanted to get away from it all and write a book about it. So I moved there. And I know you're not American, so we might need a little bit of guidance here. This is the northwest part of the United States. And believe it or not, the US owns about 130 islands between Seattle and Vancouver. And it looks like this. It's actually quite beautiful. That's Mount Baker in the back, and then these are the islands. And I moved there to write this book, and then I fell in love with it, and I bought some land there. And I'll get into why I did it in a moment, but I gave myself the project of actually homesteading it. And in doing that, I guess I became kind of a survivalist, one of these people who prepares for the end of the world, which I don't know how I feel about the term, to be honest, but let's just go with it for now. I sort of am one. I'm sort of not. So last summer, how has progress been going? Last summer, I built this thing. This is my yurt, the first structure I built. It went pretty well. And then next year, I'm going to build this. This is CGI. It's not real yet. But that's the house, the bunker, supposedly, that people say that I own. It's hard to build on the island. It's very remote. It's hard to get materials. The building season is very short. It's going to take years to get there. And I have off-grid power, off-grid wells, guns and ammo. In fact, let me show you the guns and the ammo. So I'm not crazy. In the US, everyone owns guns.
If things go bad in the future, what is this going to be what you need?
So that's a BBC reporter who I managed to scare the shit out of by shooting this rifle. Again, all Europeans are fascinated with American gun culture. And so the fact that I own guns, they had to get me on a video shooting a gun. So anyhow, that's part of what I created. That's my survivalist compound, whatever. Let me share with you some interesting experiences that I had when I was there, which justifies a little bit of my paranoia about the future. Okay? So what did I discover when I moved to this island? I'm your typical guy that was raised in big cities: Miami, San Francisco, New York, Barcelona, Berlin, right? Never lived in a small community. But suddenly I moved to this island. And after years at Facebook, they basically put a chip in your brain, right? You basically think almost in Facebook terms. You use Facebook internally. There's no personal professional divide. You're 24/7 online, et cetera, right? And suddenly I get to this island where nobody's online, right? And I asked myself the question, why aren't they on Facebook, right? And then I slowly realized, let me just show you what the island's like. This is the local bar. It's called the Lower, right? And if it looks to you like a scene from a Coen Brothers movie, like from Fargo, you wouldn't be far from the reality. Living on the island is kind of like being in a Coen Brothers movie. Why don't they use Facebook? I just couldn't get it out of my head. The reason why they don't use Facebook is you go to the bar, you don't need to check in, right? Everybody who is out is right there in front of you, right? You don't need newsfeed. When you meet a friend and you have 6 mutual friends, you create an impromptu newsfeed and catch up on all your events between them, right? Similar to Facebook, by the way, there's no privacy. Everyone knows who's cheating on who. Everyone knows who the drunk is. Everyone knows who the druggie is. Everyone knows who the screw-up is. Everyone knew what I was doing there before I would even meet them because they all gossiped. There's no privacy at all whatsoever, right? And one thing, a small tangent, I'm going to go on a tangent about privacy. How many people here claim to care about privacy out of curiosity? Just a random poll. Who cares about privacy? Okay, right, everyone raises their hands. Okay, I challenge that and say none of you actually care about privacy. And I will prove this to you with a little bit of data. Here's a pop quiz. When in the past year did Facebook have the most downloads on the Android App Store? Can anyone guess? After what? Exactly right. So this is, I know it's a tangent, but I just had to do it because GDPR and all this bullshit, right? So this is its ranking on the Android App Store. This is actually when delete Facebook happened. I don't know if Hungary, maybe it wasn't a thing, but in the English-speaking world, delete Facebook was a viral hashtag, and everyone supposedly went and deleted Facebook. they did for one day, right? It's like quitting smoking. They quit smoking for a day, and the next day they went and bought a carton of cigarettes and smoked them all, right? So the next day, Facebook had its highest level of downloads after the quit Facebook thing. So when I say that nobody cares about privacy, what I mean is, sure, I mean, you claim to care about privacy, I claim to care about privacy, but it doesn't actually change anyone's behavior, right? And the point why I'm raising this and making a big deal out of it, other than GDPR, is that what I realized, the realization that I really had when I was on Orcas, the island, was that Facebook is basically a digital simulacrum of real community, right? To use a slightly salty metaphor, Facebook is to real community like online porn is to real sex, right? It's this sort of cheap digital copy that nobody would use if they had access to the real thing, but failing the real thing, you use the copy, right? And similar to porn, the problem is if you use it too much, it completely fries your brain, and you can't even interact with the real version of it anymore, right? Funny, believe it or not, that same bar that I showed you, I used to go there. I was known for going there and like opening my laptop and like logging into Facebook and ignoring the world around me, right? Eventually, everyone trolled me so much I stopped doing it and kind of like got out of it. But it's almost like I was on an online date looking at porn with like a woman in front of me. It was like insane, right? So anyhow, I eventually got over that thing. But that's what I realized, right? That Facebook is effectively the sort of fake community that we all need, right? That lives in our pockets now. The Orcas Island that we all have, but it's been abstracted from the physical world that we actually inhabit. And I think that to me that's the other problem with it, right? That everyone has created your online community, but it has nothing to do with the colored squares on the map that is the collection of values, of laws, of national aspirations that have ruled human life since nation states arose 500 years ago, right? So let me share with you a story from the United States about where things are in the US right now, okay? So this is the US. You all recognize the US, Star-Spangled Banner, 241 years of democracy, right? The longest experiment in human democracy since the ancient Greeks. In fact, the United States is older than Periclean Athens in terms of how long democracy lasted. Longer than any European government, right? Huge democratic experiment. Well, what happened in 2016? I could talk a lot about 2016, actually. A lot of things happened. But one thing that happened, obviously, and I think you all know this, most of the country went for Trump, right? Red is Trump, obviously Republican, and blue is liberal, right? This is the basic split. And we talk about things like red states and blue states, but that's actually wrong. There's no such thing as a blue state or a red state. This is the real map, actually, right? And what you really have is blue urban islands in a sea of red, right? It's an urban-rural split. That's really how Trump won and how the US is broken down right now. The point I'm trying to get across, like you're probably thinking, why am I posting all these maps? The point I'm trying to get across is the map that really matters isn't this map, right? Which is the United States of America, 241 years of democracy. The map that really matters and that Facebook and Twitter helped create is this map. So this map is from MIT. I didn't do this work, okay, just to be clear. You can go to electome.org and see the map for yourself. What they did was they actually crawled Twitter and people with high follower counts, blue check marks, influencers, right? They classified all of them as to being either Republican or Democrat, and then looked at who they followed and who they interacted with. Basically, who were they listening to and who were they paying attention to? Again, this isn't my work. This is MIT's work, just to be clear. But the Trump supporters are basically, that US that we showed with like blue and red intermingled, and the United States of America, and blue jeans, and burgers, and Breaking Bad, and all that American culture shit that gets exported here, right? And Starbucks, which is all over Budapest, right? That's actually been completely split ideologically and internet-wise between this red side that no longer listens to anybody on the blue side, and a blue side that's a little bit purplish, but more or less doesn't talk to anyone on the red side either, right? So this is what I mean by Facebook becoming your proxy for community, intellectually. And by the way, as a random note, I'll mention my book. Again, I'm not plugging it, but there's a scene in my book in which when I joined Facebook, and they have what's called onboarding, in which you're initiated to the cult, right? And Facebook was totally a cult. And I was a very proud member for a number of years. One of the onboarding spiels they give you, the head of product of Facebook, a guy named Chris Cox, who's still there, came out and said, Facebook's going to be the New York Times of you, Channel U, your new, socially mediated newspaper. And at the time, I was like, I don't know about this. That's never going to happen, right? And of course, that's exactly what happened, actually. Mark Zuckerberg has become the editor-in-chief to the world's media, whether he wants to or not. And that's the world we're in right now, right? And so this, to me, is the big problem with that world, right? So what do? How do you fix this? Well, thinking about it like an engineer, one solution might be, well, change the physical borders to reflect the real borders, right? Can we do that? Well, believe it or not, in the US, I'm here to tell you, it's kind of happening, or it's starting to happen, I think. Random headlines. California, in the election this year, they're actually going to have a measure on the ballot to see if California secedes from the union. I don't think it's going to win, obviously. Everyone relax. But there's already a hashtag Calexit, similar to Brexit. And at one point, people laughed about Brexit not happening either, and yet it did happen, right? Similarly, in the red states, South Carolina vowed that if they ever changed gun laws, they would secede, which, if you know your history of America, it's kind of very menacing because South Carolina actually started the Civil War. In 1861, they fired on federal troops, which is what started the American Civil War. And so that's one solution to it. Is there another solution to it? Well, at the same time I was having these thoughts, Mark Zuckerberg was also having thoughts about Facebook about a year ago. He published this post, which I encourage you to read. Most of his posts are terrible. He's a terrible speaker and writer in general. But this one is actually pretty good. And of course, his solution to too much Facebook is more Facebook, right? In this piece, he basically proposes that Facebook be the new social nexus that replaces a lot of the social fabric that in the US is disappearing, right? So in the US, you don't have neighborhood associations. You don't know your neighbors. There's no labor unions are gone. Churches in the blue states don't exist. A lot of the social fabric that used to exist is basically gone, which is why Americans have adopted Facebook so quickly. So what can you do with that? What can Facebook as a new community do? What does that mean, right? Well, let me cite to you a positive example, okay? I don't know if you saw this news, but there's been massive labor strikes in the US, which in Europe, labor strikes are not really news because they happen all the time, right? You go to Paris and half the time the metro isn't running because everyone's on strike. In the US, it's pretty rare. There aren't really many unions left, okay? But in this case, teachers unions in 3 different states, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Oklahoma, went on massive strikes. This is them occupying the Capitol building, right? Which is, again, that level of civil strife just doesn't happen in the US. And this was all organized via Facebook groups. It wasn't the union, it was Facebook groups. Literally, a Facebook group caused this, right? And that just wouldn't have existed before. So again, Mark Zuckerberg, his boast about Facebook being the new community might be sound to you a little bit hyperbolic, but here it is happening, and he's been right in the past before. What's maybe a negative example of Facebook as community? Well, more recent news. In Sri Lanka, I don't know if you saw the news, the Buddhist majority Sinhalese went on riots and basically were persecuting the ethnic Muslim minority. And Facebook refused to turn off Facebook in Sri Lanka, so the government just shut it down for a week because clearly the Facebook groups were causing the ethnic strife, right? This is another version of what happens when Facebook becomes the center of community. So, getting back to the supposed topic of my talk, which you came to listen to, what's the doomsday scenario? Well, to me, I think the biggest thing that's going to go on with Facebook in the next 3 to 5 years, I often get this question given all the news, like, what do you think is going to happen with Facebook? Cambridge Analytica is a bullshit story, it doesn't matter. The whole Russian bot thing is a total bullshit story, et cetera, et cetera. I think the big deal is this, right? It's the battle between those that would use Facebook to produce positive community and replacing a lot of the social fabric that, frankly, capitalism has displaced, or it's those who use it for this, who use it for very negative outcomes, right? And I think the challenge for Facebook, what Mark Zuckerberg loses sleep over is this, right? It's how do you make the previous slide happen, and how do you avoid this slide happening? And I think it's a big battle because I think nobody has the real answer to it. Certainly, I have no particular answer to it. Nobody I know who works at the company has any particular answer to it. And I think that's going to be a big problem that comes out. You might ask me, so Antonio, what are you going to do about all this shit, right? Well, I have to say, I don't have an answer either. I plan on going back here, which is the San Juan Islands. By the way, that's not Photoshop. There's actually a bunch of orcas whales that live in the area, and you see them broach all the time, actually. But I want to stress, the reason why I'm going back to the island is not because of the whales. It's not because of my compound. It's not because of my off-grid power supply. It's not because of the guns and ammunition that I have. It's because there's real community there, actually. There's a real people who know me, and there's a real social structure there that I don't have anywhere else in my little techno-yuppie life, right? And this will survive, I think, the coming problems that'll come. And so, to me, what I would say, I think in the future, real community will be a huge luxury. And if I could give you any advice, I don't know why I'm giving you advice, but it would be to try to find that real community in your lives, and kind of don't depend on Facebook so much, because that community is very real. Like, I don't think Facebook is fake. Like, it's real, but I think it's often abstracted in weird ways that makes your mind run in strange directions that is probably not very healthy. And oh, by the way, I also have other doomsday scenarios. I think automation is going to be crazy and going to eliminate half the jobs in 30, 40 years. I think there's a bunch of stuff that's going to happen. I just chose to focus on this, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I'm finished. Sorry, I'm officially finished, and you can ask me questions now.
Thanks very much. So this is the noise that you're going to hear.
Oh my God.